on our last thing. So
fair enough. Fair enough. Doing okay?
doing well. Yeah, doing well. So we're rolling.
So, so since you and I have not had like a good number of conversations, right?
We have not.
I thought, so I was trying to do my homework, all right?
Yep.
So I can, I'm not much of a host, but I try, right? And so I thought, all right, it's time to reach out to Brad.
Yeah.
So I shot Brad a note, and your smile tells me you can kind of guess where some of this went, right? But I actually just said, hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Was it me or you that were cutting out there?
Well, I don't think it's me, but
Hopefully.
It's always hard to know.
Let's go.
Always hard to know.
Hopefully my internet continues to suffice here. But anyway, so you reached out to Brad.
Right. And so, I was kind of thinking he might come back with a handful of serious items we could discuss.
Yeah.
Because some of the things, like, obviously we could go obvious, like VBT or whatever. But I also wanted it to open up to, some fun stuff. I got like 8 things, and not a single one of them was directly work related. Certainly indirectly. So I'm gonna actually lead off with one of those.
Okay.
Because it sounds like you and me share a similar affliction.
Oh, okay.
And so the report here is that your caffeine routine, as he put it, was off the charts at UNO.
Yeah.
And so you're going to, if you would, well, that's where I was going, right? So EliteForm, I don't know if you've ever come visited like one of our booths at a show.
Yeah.
But in the last couple of years, what we've done is we've basically had a barista at the booth, right? And so the thought process was, it's 8 years on, right? So most people that are at those shows know who we are, right? They kind of get it. We'll still have a unit, happy to talk shop.
Yeah.
But I know I get sick of standing in lines to get coffee before those things start.
100%.
And I thought, look at all these coaches that we work with. Same thing. So let's do people a solid, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like you might have been in line. Like
yeah,
it's prolific. Talk to me. What are we doing?
I would have been. I definitely would have been in line. It wouldn't have been the first thing I had that day, though. I'll say that. I'm usually a pot in, so like a 12.
You've got visual aids for this conversation.
I'm usually one of these in by at least 9 o'clock. So, and it's not. I like coffee. So I mean, I haven't tried it, but I think I could probably go without. Maybe, I don't know, but I've never tried.
Is there really? I mean, there's a lot of things you can try in life.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not.
Is going without coffee really one of those things you need to try?
It's not high on my list. So.
So now, are you just a drip coffee guy, or are you all over the board, or what are we into?
I'm a Folgers Classic Roast. Maybe every once in a while I have some Maxwell House, but that's what I'm going with. So
gotcha. See, I'm more bougie than that.
Okay.
Just hand raised, a little more bougie than that. I get up, stumble down the stairs, straight to an espresso machine.
Okay.
Right. I have zero ability to like do the whole barista art thing.
Yeah.
And when people will ask me like, well, so why espresso? Like my comment is always this, like, how do you make a diamond? It's coal under pressure. Yep. How do you make espresso? It's coffee under pressure.
Under pressure.
Right? That's what it is. So that's my line. I'm full of crap, of course, but that's the way I lay it out. So is it just coffee?
I was purely like just coffee. When I was at South Dakota State as a GA, it was just coffee. And every once in a while, we couldn't get we had to lift early, like as a staff. I'd do a 5 a.m. lift before a 6:30 group or something. Maybe I'd hit a 5-hour energy or something like that. But it was just coffee. And then I got to Omaha. Actually, no, I got to Augustana, and my boss drank Rock Stars religiously.
Okay.
So I kind of dabbled with the Rock Stars, and then I got to Omaha, and then that's when the Bangs hit the scene. So,
Okay.
you know,
A little creatine, like
yeah. You know, you got to have
play that
that
up.
super creatine. You know, so it's got all the essential food groups. So I've done a little bit of that. But some days like you go, you know, it's Thursday and you've been drinking coffee for 4 days straight. Sometimes you need a little carbonation. We'll switch it up a little bit. So I'll do that. I'm not a big pre-workout guy. So I don't do that unless it's, you know, unless we're trying to hit 90% on Squatober.
Are you doing Squatober?
I am. I might hit the GAs and the assistants up for a little bit of for a little bit of pre-workout. So, but other than that,
well, we've got 3 of our guys doing Squatober.
Yeah.
And it's too bad Brad's not on here. So Kyle from our crew played soccer at Creighton.
Yeah.
Hell of a soccer player. But occasionally, like in the office, he would go and lift, right? Like we have a million different reasons to have to do that. And I'm sure he's sick of me like looking over and being like, ooh, like we've got some issues we need to address, right? So Squatober hit, right. And I'm sure Kyle's like, he should jump in. Just sick of me like looking up and making comments. And I was like, well, like here's an opportunity for Brad to maybe fix him, you know? And to Kyle's credit, like so far so good. He's rocked out every week. So I'll have to do like a Squatober follow up. How's it going for you?
It's going well. We bumped up 5% the other day. So I was working off of 500. Now I'm working off 515, and we hit the wave load the other day, and it was really, really good, really fast. So I don't know. I'm notorious for having a little bit of back problems late in Squatober. So I'm trying to stay healthy as we go through here.
So it's not your first Squatober?
No. It's only my third. I did Squatober here my first year, and then we actually the staff during COVID quarantine, we just like, let's run Squatober again. So we just went back and ran it over. So yeah.
So do your athletes, like, is this something your athletes are aware of? And do they kind of get into it, or is that kind of separate from your day to day with the athletes?
I'd say it's separate, with the exception of Tuesdays, the soccer team's lifting, and we're lifting on the opposite side of the weight room. That's our time. That's when we have to get it in. So, but other than that, I'd say the athletes don't really know what we're doing or why.
Do you not want them to know? Is that what that smile means?
I mean, I don't know. They can't. I guess they could. No, I'm not.
Sure.
I'm not trying to rub it in their, tell them what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. Yeah. They train, I train. They know I train. So that's good enough.
Well, that's another thing that Brad commented on. I guess it's kind of semi-serious. Like he said, I'm literally looking at the email. He's always training himself, and it sounds like Brad's kind of curious, like what you're doing now.
Oh yeah.
Because it sounds like, well, maybe I shouldn't read into it. Like obviously Brad finds it pretty interesting, and it's not his first time around the block. So, like, what are you up to? And I'm more curious, like, what historically has gone on that clearly Brad is interested.
Oh, historically, I'm all over the map. So,
is that because you just want to try things that,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm always trying to, I'm like, I wonder how this will go. I wonder if this will work. I wonder if this loading scheme, how this is going to go, and I obviously, just like every strength coach, steal stuff from everybody. So that's, well,
it's sort of called like reading and like staying on top of things.
Yeah. That's the polite version of that. Yeah.
Well,
and so that's what it's like. So like this year, Squatober. We redid a Squatober during quarantine. Then we did a bunch of Travis Mass, like squat everyday stuff. Actually, I had the great pleasure of working with Richard Borden for the last 3 summers. So Richard Borden was the president of NSCA, I think like 2000 and 2003. He was a high-level Olympic lifting coach, nationally recognized Olympic lifting coach, world recognized Olympic lifting coach. He actually just passed away this summer, but he would run our continuing education in the summer for our staff here at Utah State. So my first year, we would lecture every Friday, and Richard was the dean of Northern Arizona. He was a professor at Kentucky, very, very well educated in exercise physiology, and his wife is a physical therapist. And so between the two of them, we would do lectures on Fridays, and then we would Olympic lift. So he would train us, and then we would, at the end of the summer, then we'd do a competition. So it's so every summer, that's kind of what that looked like. And then I'd get into my whatever other workouts. Let's see
experimental.
Experimental. Let's see how big we can get, sort of stuff. And then and I've always been infatuated with different types of training, and just let's see how this works. Triphasic. We did last year. We followed up Squatober with triphasic, which was fun, but just grueling. And so we needed to take a break. So this year we're following up triphasic with VBT stuff, because we got the EliteForm demo. So we're following up with that, and then kind of move into some other stuff. Then basketball season starts. So when basketball season starts, I'm doing hotel workouts and just
things I'm sure they get a little different.
Patch things together. So yeah.
Gotcha. So has there been anything that you've experimented with where you sort of thought you were skeptical going in, but then maybe coming out of it, you were like, actually, there might be something to this?
Yeah.
Or the flip, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, even I started playing around with triphasic stuff when I was at Augustana, and I was very, very skeptical about like the load. I'm like, this is high. There's no way I'm gonna get these kids to do this. And so I started doing. I'm like, okay, I can do it. They can do it. Like, sort of thing. Up until I always thought is Squatober really that good? Am I really going to improve my max that much at the end of the month? And I have every single time. Is that
right?
I've crushed it. So I'm just like, okay, all right. I got to get some more. I get some more volume in my stuff. I got to get some more different types of loading. I got to do ladders. I'm doing waves. All that stuff that they've got in there, and it's fun. One, it changes up every day and keeps things interesting. And so yeah, it's good.
So, and I know I kind of asked a similar question, but are your athletes aware that you do those kinds of experiments almost on yourself, or for them is it just a little more strict, like they don't really know how coach is coming up with what they're getting?
Yeah, it was funny because when I was at Omaha, I had one of our guards came up to me and he goes, Coach O, he goes, shakes his head and he goes, you got a screw loose in there, man. There's something going on. And just because I'm just like, hey, I've done all this to myself. All the conditioning stuff that I put guys through, all the work to rest ratios that I come up with, and how we build our conditioning sessions from the summer all the way through. It's when I was at South Dakota State, I was running those. I would go out in the field and run it. And it was so I know what you're going through. I know. I mean, I look like it now, but I know what you're going through. So.
Well, one of the things I find interesting about that, and probably the reason I asked twice now, is it seems like that would be an excellent way to sort of develop just kind of trust.
Yeah.
And rapport, because it's one thing if you're prescribing things and people can kind of get a sense, of whether you've been through it or not, or it's just, I don't want to say regurgitated out of a book, but that's the
Right.
vibe, right?
Yeah.
Versus like, you know, when the jelly legs are going to hit for most of them because you've
Yeah.
done it, you've experienced it. And I didn't know how much that necessarily would have come across or how much you would have wanted it
I,
necessarily to come across.
I don't really want that to come across. I don't want to be the guy that's like, well, I can do it, you can do it, or I've done it, you can, I've done it, so
I didn't
I
think
don't
of
want
that.
I don't want that to come across that way. But what I do enjoy is like when we're coming into a time frame when I know we should be feeling good. I know like we're getting stronger, we're getting faster, and
Right.
then obviously we lay off a little bit, unload a little bit, and then these kids realize like my verticals went up 3 inches, or like I'm running really, like I'm a lot faster.
Yeah.
We've got than what I have been, and I feel better. I'm stronger. I when I'm playing on the floor, basketball guys are on the floor. They're going to the rim and they get hit and they're not just getting blown up. They can actually take some contact.
Right.
So I think when they see it translate to the sport, that's the best. That's the best thing for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's an interesting point. I didn't really think of it from sort of that ego side of like a coach, like wanting to say, well, I did this.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
prefer.
depending on who your athletes are, I can see where it makes sense to keep a little distance on that one. So
Yeah,
that's good stuff. That's very good stuff. And yeah, who doesn't like to see their numbers go up?
right.
So for sure, I totally get that. Um,
Really.
so I mean, I think this is something that's getting talked about a lot, but every state is different. So how is COVID going for you guys right now?
When everything started, we shut down just like everywhere else. But for the most part, in our little area of Cache Valley, it hasn't been too bad. So I
That's cool.
think from a total case number within our county and like the next 3 counties, like in the Bear River, the health district, if you will, it hasn't been nearly as bad as a lot of places. Now it's increased obviously here recently, just like it has everywhere else in the country, and then it increased when we brought back 20,000 students too. So that's been that. But like we were a mask mandate for a while, and then it went away, and then it's back now for the state of Utah. But I really feel like outside of maybe those first 2 or 3 weeks, our little community is kind of just continued as normal. It's been actually pretty good. We've obviously been able to stay at work. I've been able to stay at work, and we started training kids again, and that first week or second week in June, we had football and basketball back, and then obviously the kids that lived in town and were still in the area were back, and opened our facilities. And so we've been kind of going with obviously all of our protocols and restrictions and all that stuff. We've been operating as normal as possible in this time frame. And there's a lot of schools in our conference, just like everybody on the West Coast. They weren't able to get even out of their house, let alone to school.
Right.
So we've really been fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been, well, even like Brad and I emailed obviously a little bit more than just what randomness we could chat about with you. But like there's almost like half the time I feel like instead of like just checking in on what used to be strictly speaking work, right? Like,
Right.
I could check in with you about how that demo unit's going, right? And that would be pretty typical.
Yeah.
But people are sort of starved for the usual social conversation. So
Yeah.
like I was at a school yesterday, and I think 2 hours in, we were all still bantering.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some work stuff in there too, of course, but she's like, oh, a fresh face to talk to instead of the same only 3 people. I've been around, since March. So it's good to hear that you've got a greater sense of, I guess, normalcy. I hate using that word now.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. I know, but that's more or less what it was like. I don't know. It it was very, very odd. And, and the strength and conditioning community was awesome during all that. Like the amount of collab that everybody was doing in the continuing education that they were putting on, and the Zoom conferences that they were doing. It was, it was obviously right around the time where we would have our, CSCCA and NSCA clinics and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
We were the basketball symposium in Las Vegas was supposed to happen and didn't. So it was perfect timing, but it was very, very impressive from our community how that all unfolded. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always, as I hate describing us or myself as a vendor. For whatever reason, I would just rather be considered a part of the community, but we have to accept where you're at in the community, right? Yeah. But like normally what we'll do is we try to schedule like a nice hour-long conversation or something, and it's just an open-ended, how's it going, right? Like, how's the system now, right? What can we do to improve? And almost all those conversations turn into like 90 minutes. Yeah. Right. A lot of talking shop, a lot of not talking shop, caffeine or whatever. Right.
Right.
And so in a way, and Kurt Warner said that this like last podcast last Friday, there was kind of this weird, I don't want to use the word benefit because it's been too tough on everyone, but you could definitely find a silver lining, like in just taking advantage of some of that time. So, yeah, I mean, completely with you, sort of end to end. So what you said, you're going to do Squatober, and you have a little VBT stuff coming up. Any other experiments that are in your notepad?
No, I got to. So I got certified in FRC a year ago, and
for folks who don't know, what's FRC?
Functional range conditioning, and so that group has put together a system for improving. This is a very brief synopsis, I guess, but it's a way.
We're on a casual podcast, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's a system where you can improve joint health, joint integrity, joint control, strength within the joint, robustness within the joint. So I did that, and obviously really enjoyed it, and we've been implementing it little by little with our groups, and we haven't gotten like way deep into it, and I need to, and I'm the stiffest person alive, so I have got to.
So Kyle should come hang out with you.
Yeah, and I mean now. Now I can get squat depth now. So I'm not all the like I've got some issues, but but I can perform.
Well, we all have issues, so no reason to be too hard on yourself there.
Yeah. So I really want to dive into that a ton, along with, for this is the this year we're going to do some microdosing with men's basketball in season training, and it's something I've always wanted to do. And our staff is on board, and we're really in tune. Our staff is really in tune with the guys, and and periodization. I mean, Coach Smith is really good with periodization. He really understands how to yin and yang with the weight room and practice and games.
Cool.
and how everything goes, and it's really fun. It's been a lot of fun. So. Conversations with him about it, and we're on board, and so we're going. And it'd be my first time kind of putting it together and organizing it. So it's I don't know, it's gonna be good. So
it's cool that you've got that trust factor. Yeah, because sometimes you end up with that conversation about your sport coach just completely lacks context for what you're trying to do in the weight room, and so I mean, I just feel good for the coaches I work with anytime it's clear that those things have come together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's the VBT experimenting going to be? And no product pitch, like just from a science side, like what are you going to be looking at?
I think a lot of it is just going to be, we're just going to try to prescribed speed zones and just go for them and just see where, make sure we're in the range that we need to be in, and kind of get a better feel for exactly how fast we're moving the bar, the intent in which we're moving the bar. Obviously, we've been squatting heavy for every day for a month, so we're just going to kind of change the focus a little bit and use EliteForm as a tool to make sure we got everything honed in. And I've used Tendo units in the past. We had 6 or 7 at Omaha, and we had 4 at South Dakota State. So I did a lot of in-season autoregulation. And then cool. we would do competition stuff in the off season with bar speed and power and stuff like that. So I have some experience with VBT, so it'll be fun to program. It also gives my GAs and assistants they get to program, and then I don't have to do it. So I get to just jump on the program. Yeah, I let them program it, and we kind of go through there, and I jump on and we talk about it, and it'll be fun. So,
well, it sounds like you and I kind of share this. So, I ride bikes a lot, for whatever that's worth. And so, recently I actually got a coach, and it's just I'm ancient, but the competitive side's still there, right? I still like training, and then I kind of just geek out on the process, and it sounds like the man I'm talking to is somewhat similar in that regard, right? So, so I'll finish a work day, and I just have this prescribed workout, right? I'll go through, and it's just kind of nice to check the workout. Here's what I've got to do. I'm not having to think about it.
Yeah.
And you just go bang it out, And I'm kind of in that experimental phase. To kind of steal from our conversation, in that I've always used a heart rate monitor a lot.
Yeah.
But I used to race single speed all the time.
Okay.
And so I never had a power meter. And so there's these weird analogies with VBT, and then literally riding for watts on a bike.
Yeah. And
sadly, what I've discovered is I have zero perspective on what it means to go hard from a watts. So we go through this testing protocol, right, to just establish some baseline, right? And it's almost just to figuring out what your velocity ranges are. It's super similar. And so, go out for 5 minutes as hard as you can. And I get 4 minutes in, blow sky high, have to pull off. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I would like to say we're out of that phase, but we're not. I just blew up yesterday on a 3-minute effort. So good times. Another thing that if I were a coach in your shoes, I probably wouldn't want my athletes sharing that with me either. You know what I mean?
No. That's funny.
So can we talk whiskey? I mean, I don't want
we talk
that was whiskey? That was Brad's last thing. Now
5 years ago we could have.
Okay. What happened 5 years ago?
Oh, nothing. I just what's that?
Stepped away?
I stepped away. So that's where I need to stay.
Okay. So. Well, so I took Brad's comment in a different direction. So we were with a coach, Brian Neese at Brownsburg High School in Indiana. Yeah. And he's a former strongman, U.S. champ, I believe. But great guy, and he wears this grumpy from Disney T-shirt all the time. And it's one of those deals where he's so humble, he'll act like he doesn't know anything, but then he starts spouting off velocity-based information.
Yeah.
And you just know, okay. I appreciate it, but at the same time. And so we did a podcast with them, but it was back when we could do it in person. And we get done, and next thing you know, we're talking he and Avery, you've met Avery on our crew, are talking about whiskey and about finding these rare whiskeys. And then Brian informed that he basically has this collection of whiskeys in his garage where he'll just hang out and I would call it bougie, kind of like my coffee comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't know if that's where we were at with the whiskeys. Is that not where Brad was going?
That's well, I would say I did not have the pocketbook at the time to be dabbling in the nice, like really nice collecting whiskey. Now, if I had the opportunity, I loved it. I loved the taste, the smokiness. Like there was a place in Sioux Falls called Crawford's, and they would take a cedar plank and just make the best smoked with. Like it was awesome. So I'd say if I started back in, that would be me. I would have the collection in my garage.
Fair enough.
But I don't know. I just turned away. So that's where I am.
Fair enough. So, I understand. I'll just put it that way. I understand.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like kind of your role and kind of where you see strength conditioning heading, like, do you feel like you're going to develop yourself as a coach, like by that continued experimentation, right, and education from a science side, or do you have a kind of a longer term game plan like that?
With just in terms of training myself and like that sort of type or that thing, or just how am I gonna improve myself as a coach in the long term in general?
Well, I'm interested in both, but the question was mainly B, right? Okay. So I probably led into that in a weird way, but yeah, more of like a kind of a career consideration, because we're starting to get into this world where there's a lot of branches you can take. Like you get this good foundation, right? And then you can start to split off. And I'm just wondering where your interests lie, right? Yeah. And where you might want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the niche that I've gone with is obviously men's basketball. So when I was at Augustana, I was the Augustana University in Sioux Falls. For everybody doesn't know, it's a Division II school in the NSIC. I was the assistant there, and I believe I had 5 sports I was working with when I was there, and then I had the opportunity. I was there for 2 years, and I loved it. I loved the athletes, loved the university. Coach Chambers was a great mentor, still is of mine, and so when I had the opportunity to go down to Omaha. And it started out as the assistant. There was 3 of us that were assistants, and we're all full time, but there was nobody that was really the director. And after a year or so, that kind of changed. So then we ended up having a director that was over hockey, the director of hockey. And then I went over to the director of basically everything else. And then we had a full-time assistant who was younger, like in his first year coach. And then we had we did like this huge like intern curriculum basically. So we were bringing in a bunch of interns to kind of help us triage the number of athletes. When we started doing that, and then as actually we're very, very fortunate, we were able to get some paid internships, almost GA spots. I actually had a former athlete of mine at Augustana come down and be our GA, and so it was that all kind of stemmed out that way. But I guess in all those spots, I was really trying to be a better coach and learn from everybody and learn from my mentors about training and periodization and working with athletes and running a room and organization and all that kind of stuff. And so I'd say, but since I've kind of my last year or 2 years at year and a half at Omaha and now into this, I think like the more the administrative type of role has fallen onto my plate. And so I've had to learn that way, like communicating with coaches, communicating with administration, communicating with boosters, that sort of growth has had to take place, and I'm not the greatest at it. I mean, I've got a ton to improve. Brad and I read Patrick Lencioni's book, Death by Meeting, and I read it, and then we were talking about some of his meetings, and I go, "You got to read this book," And so I read that in my first year here, and then started implementing that into our staff meetings. So, it was because the staff meetings I was leading were atrocious. So it was. I was like,
so for people who haven't read the book, what were some of the things that you implemented?
Well, just the conciseness and organization at which and getting things done in the meeting, and so we don't need to meet and then meet about everything under the sun. We need to meet about these things, and then there's certain times in the year when things need to be accomplished, where I've got smaller meetings, and the smaller meetings are just on the floor, or we've got bigger meetings, bigger staff meetings where we have to accomplish something on a global level, or maybe we have a smaller staff meeting. It's just part of us, and we're trying to accomplish one thing with a very specific topic, and how the meeting is organized, what we're doing within the meeting, and just making sure that it's not drawn out, monotonous, mundane nonsense, and getting it taken care of. So I think that was that's the. And obviously that's not a terrible, but that's a very, very small portion of what that book is about. You got to dive into it. And he does a really good job. All of his books are good, and how it's a story. And then at the end, it really brings it all together, and it keeps you engaged, and you can read a book in, 2 days. So.
I'm trying to remember who was the author on that. Do you remember that off the top?
Patrick Lencioni. Hold on, let me.
Oh, that's right. You even said that earlier.
So
we've lost him.
Backward.
Oh, nice work.
Yeah. So that's the book, and then
gotcha.
He's got he's got a couple of other ones, and I actually picked that up in an airport where we were traveling. I think maybe Montana State, our first year. It was our first game, and we're walking through the Salt Lake City airport, and that had been on my mind, just being a better boss, and that was something I needed to do. And I was just in a bookstore, and I was like, "Hey, there we go." And so I grabbed it and went. So
nice. No, I will do similar things, just in that sense of, my feeling is, in a weird way, my first clients, if you will, are sort of our staff, right?
Yeah.
And then if our staff is good and I'm doing right by them, then the domino falls, and everyone we work with becomes good.
Right.
Because our crew is on super solid footing. And certainly I'm not the greatest at it. It's always a work in progress, right?
Yep.
So we have typically 2 meetings a week. There's the Monday meeting, and I usually occupy a lot of that. Right. And then we have this Thursday afternoon, and the whole goal of that is, hey, is there anything we've missed that's come in? Do we have everybody help that we need to help? Right. All those things. How's Logan doing?
Yeah.
And I have to work to not bogart that meeting in some way.
Yeah.
And then, probably the guys could chime in if they're on here, but I don't know, 25% of the time I have to issue some apology. Hey, I do have one thing. It's not related to anything we're talking about. Here it is. Yeah. And then I try to get out, but it still happens once in a while. So are you thinking more than to read into an assistant AD path where you're also maybe holding on to a men's basketball, where you're kind of growing a department then under you in that way, but you're still hands-on with a subset of athletes?
Yeah, I think I'm going to coach as long as I can. I mean, I love to coach, and that's we had that conversation so many times here during this break from March to June. It's man, I miss coaching. You just all the continuing ed we were doing and the conversations we were having they were all awesome. But you just want to be on the floor, you know, and you want to see kids improve, and you want to help them reach their athletic goals, or heck, even their personal goals. It's amazing what the weight room can do to people, and so just you're put through things that you're not comfortable with, and you just become comfortable being uncomfortable, and so it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm going to coach as long as I can. Obviously, yeah, I think I could see myself moving to an administrative role, holding on to a sport and doing that. I've got a ton to learn. I probably should get like my business MBA and like do a couple other things to make sure I can talk on their level and speak at their level, and and have conversations that way. So yeah, I've got a lot of work to do, but yeah, I could definitely see that.
Well, you've kind of hit on something that I know I bring up a fair amount, just to like work colleagues, friends, etc. Just there's that feeling of a particular jargon,
Yeah.
depending on what environment you're in, and it like sometimes I'll joke about it being buzzword bingo.
Yeah.
But there's also no question that it just sort of helps sometimes. Like I remember going into the first board meeting that I was involved with, where I'm presenting EliteForm to our board of investors.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got to nail all these conversation points, and like, how do investors talk about this? Like what, like literally what words do I need to use? Because like our forecast sheet, there's going to be some language here, but it's going to, like, if you don't care, I don't care.
I'm
like it's called a no BS list. That's a good way to put it, right? And so, like, if I'm talking to our crew, right? If Avery and I are talking about, like, hey, what installs do we have coming up, right? Well, the no BS list looks like this, right? Just no bullshit. Here's what's going to happen, right? No games played. And so I'm in this board meeting and almost spit out, well, our no bullshit list looks like this. Probably not how they wanted to hear that.
No.
So you can't do any worse than me.
No. Well, and that's one of our administrators put a book on my list, and I haven't read it yet, and I need to. Word Voodoo, and she's just like, you need to read this, and like it's gonna like help you obviously have conversations with everyone. And Brad can attest to this, and every strength coach can, I'm sure. But like when I was younger, like I didn't care who you were. I'm just going to tell you how it is,
Right.
And so now I'm not too far from that, but I'm a lot further away than I used to be. And so just being more calculated with how the words I use, how I use them, when I bring up conversation, how quickly I answer things. Like I've obviously seasoned myself a little bit. So I'm getting better at that, but yeah, I've got a long ways to go.
Well, yeah, there's some times when a touch of tact, shall we say,
well,
might go a long way.
It's needed.
Well, yeah, well said. There's an aspect of knowing your audience, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're all just trying to get better over time, right?
Yep.
So how are things looking for you guys specifically, like with the team you're handling coming into whatever type of season, right, may unfold? Like, is there like there was this big concern about like bringing people back, right, and bringing people back in a way that would avoid injuries because everyone's detrained in a way they haven't been detrained before.
Right.
How are you guys sitting?
We're doing really well. I think we're on pace to. We're on pace to start our, have our first game November 24th or November 25th, whatever day they decide that first game will be. It hasn't technically been scheduled yet. So we're on pace to be right where we were last year when we played on November 1st, and I think
nice.
A lot of that was we had a solid group of guys that were around this summer, and trained. Now, well, obviously, we're not without our issues. We've had to do some quarantines, and we've had some, we've had positive tests, and just like everywhere else has. So,
Right.
So that's been that's we have to deal with that. And then obviously those kids are out 10 days or 14 days, so their progression back in. Their progression back in is a little slower and a little bit more calculated. Now, early on when we were going through that, it wasn't so much because everybody was just everybody's in the more or less the same spot where, you're behind, but you're not as far behind because those guys aren't as far ahead. But now once we started to practice, a couple guys go out, you notice really fast, like, hey, they've lost a lot. Over these last 10 days or 14 days. So, because everybody else we're practicing, you got 2-hour practices. So from a conditioning level, they're there. From a weight room level, we just hit 95% this week in the weight room. We'll unload next week, and then we're going to go into some more power emphasis work for a few weeks before we get to our first game. And so, like, those guys have taken on heavy loads, and it's just something that, these other guys are doing bodyweight squats and wall sits, in their apartment. So, like, it's just, so bringing them back, it has to, we have been very calculated about how we do it. And so far we've been pretty good, and they catch up pretty quick. So it's been very successful. And we use Strive, as well. And
Oh, okay.
you guys, you know Strive, right? Cause
Yeah, sure. I know of them, right? For sure.
Yeah, I know. I had mentioned something to their group of guys about EliteForm and VBT, and like they're super, intrigued and interested in like how EMG and VBT how they mesh, So
Right.
So we use Strive as a readiness tool, a monitoring tool. So it's EMG. They have EMG in their sensors in their compression shorts, and then
Right.
they wear a puck, and the puck connects to their shorts, and then the puck itself is an accelerometer, or similar to like a catapult puck, where it's got distance, speed, deceleration, acceleration, jumps, all that stuff. And so then I get an internal view of muscle action, then I get an external view of like how far are we running, what are we doing, I guess, from a movement standpoint. So
Yeah, it was kind of a weird understatement when I said I know of them. Like, I definitely know a little bit more than just that. But it's always interesting. There's a lot of sort of complementary, I think of it as complementary kind of ways to gather like the science you might want, right?
yeah,
Or the measurements you might want. And I think they've done a pretty decent job of aggregating a couple of those that used to be just kind of one-offs, right? You had to get it in 2 different places.
yeah.
And so, is that a fair way, like, in your mind, to describe that?
Yeah, I definitely would. I mean, the thing with like with some technologies, it's like you wear it during practice or you wear it during a conditioning session. You get that information, but then like the weight room is completely forgotten. Other than if you're not using VBT and you're not using those types of tools to look at metrics or KPIs within the weight room, where I'm tracking right to left symmetry and glute, quad, hamstring activation correlation between the 3, and we're looking at obviously the stress that we're putting on the body from an internal standpoint, not just an external standpoint. I mean, you get those numbers, the load numbers, right? You get the external load numbers that are whatever. And one thing that I've really enjoyed since we've been using the system for a year. It's we think that we're not maybe doing, maybe it's a medium day or a low day or something, from a total load standpoint. And that's what it'll show. But from an internal standpoint, our recovery is poor. Our sleep is poor. Our nutrition is poor. Our hydration is poor. So that's all relating to the fact that my internal load is so high. or I'll see an internal load that's off the charts, and I'm watching this kid struggle in practice, and this practice shouldn't be hard, and I grab him afterwards and I go, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's like, I was so beat, that was so hard, and I go, "Well, what's going on?" And he's like, I had 3 tests this week and I haven't been sleeping, and my girlfriend broke up with me, and and so there's all these stressors that you don't really realize that take into effect, on athletic performance. And so I'm not. It's not like it's telling me this, right? I have to infer and I have to dig, but I have something to go off of.
Well, yeah, I always find it interesting, like we use KPI as a term, right?
Yeah.
And the I in there is crucial. It's an indicator.
Right.
And so one of the things, I'm going to, not to sound soapboxy or get on a soapbox, but like one of the things data gives you is quality indicators to know when you need to dig.
Right.
And there's so many. Here's another thing that I said in a board meeting once that probably wasn't overly appreciated. Like VBT, like it's one of the niches of data, right, that are going to be important to you or and people in your role. It's not everything.
Yeah.
And when on the business side of things, if you're not into talking shop like we would be, you probably don't want to hear that like this item that you've invested in isn't like the holy grail of all things sports performance. But hey, maybe we should just accept that, right? And start tying some of these causal elements together. And anytime you can get good indicators of what might be going on, particularly when an athlete's out of sight, out of mind, you can't know what's going on, every single thing that's going on with them all the time, every day.
No, I mean, we're having a 3-hour practice. Yeah, 3-hour practice and a 1-hour lift. So I get to see these kids for 4 hours a day, depending on when, if or we're coming in and we're doing something extra, outside of that. So, that's four of their 24. And I had the conversation with the group the other day. We do a lot for our guys from a supplementation standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint. I mean, we are giving them every opportunity to be successful. So that, but I had this conversation with them the other day. I was like, listen, I see you for an hour. You're in practice for 2.5, 3 hours. I go, you're going to sleep for 8. You better sleep for 8. What are you doing with the rest of your time? Are you getting up extra shots? Are you going to tutor sessions? Are you taking care of your classwork? Are you watching film with a coach? Are you seeing me for your piss poor ankle mobility? What are you doing to make sure that we are going to be successful at a high level? And I think that's common verbiage across the board for our entire staff, coaching staff, support staff, and the guys hear it every day. And we have been successful. I mean, we've been successful. So it's we've got a good group of guys. So
nice. So we only have a couple more minutes before Instagram will kick us off. And I've been working really hard not to have these overly abrupt endings to all these conversations. And
okay.
I suck at it. Like someone will be saying something interesting and I'm watching the clock tick down, right? And I don't want to interrupt them. I want to hear what's coming up. Doesn't always work. But anyway, so darts or shuffleboard?
Oh.
Which are you better at?
Which am I better
Blue Jay Brad obviously sent me that one as well.
So
I take it you're good at both.
I'm not bad. I was better at shuffleboard when I was younger, and I'm better at darts now.
So how does one become pretty good at shuffleboard?
You go to Cubby's in Brookings, South Dakota a lot.
Okay.
And they got a shuffleboard in the back, and you play with Brad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So which one's Brad better at, darts or shuffleboard?
I never really played.
Let's
Brad.
circle this back.
I never really played Brad in darts, only shuffleboard, and he was good. He would beat me. So he was good. But like I played cricket the other day in my buddy's garage, and had a fun go, me and him versus a bunch of people. So it was a good time. But and we played a lot of darts when I was in Omaha too. So that was fun.
Now, when Avery was out there, I don't know if you guys had a chance to like grab a dinner or anything afterwards. No, were darts played?
No. Well,
all right. Well, either the next time you're nearby in Omaha or the next time we're out there, it's not going to be my skill set, but our crew. I'm happy to hang out, right? But our crew can maybe give you a game, so maybe that's something to look forward to. So, hey man, thanks for coming on and doing this. I appreciate it. I think we talked about it months ago, or you sent like a couple emails back and forth. You were the first person Brad said I should have on. Brad did our first podcast, period. And I was like, hey man, and it was in person, which was great.
Yeah. I listened to his, and you were in his office, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He helped me not sound like a complete, fool of an interviewer, and it worked really well.
Well, I was hoping this wasn't live, so you could edit my idiocracy. So. Well,
you're always going to come off better than me, so you're always going to be good, right? You don't have to outswim everybody else. You just have to outswim the shark, right?
Right.
So,
that's correct.
Hey man, in all seriousness, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. We will, this is one of the first ones that you and I hadn't had some good shop talk beforehand. So I appreciate you doing it, and hopefully we can do it again in person sometime.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I can come out there and check out Utah State. So thanks again, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks.